welcome to another web development tutorial. In this video, we're validating a simple HTML form using JavaScript. I already have a simple HTML web page that I created here using Bootstrap library. Bootstrap is a front-end framework for building websites. It gives you easy to use widgets and components that you can just copy and paste right into your editor and just change a few things there, a few parameters if you will. Okay, so this tutorial, it's more like an intermediate level. So if you're not familiar with web development at all, this might look very staggering to you. So I have a few tutorials I have done on HTML and CSS. You might want to go check that out. Okay, so for this, we'll be looking at just validating this form more on the JavaScript aspect of this. So let's take a look at how this web page looks like on the browser. So this is it. This is the email where you enter your email address, the input tag for the email. This is for password. This is confirm password. This is select option where you choose the gender, male, female, and this is the submit tag, submit button. Now the way this validation works is that when the page loads, this button should be disabled, and if these fields are empty, the button should also be disabled, and if the passwords do not match, the button should also be disabled, so that we can validate this form or give the user a feedback as he's typing. We'll be using an event listener called on key up to really do that on key up for the input and on change for the select tag. So that the user can see immediate feedback whether the input he's putting it's correct or not, especially for this password and confirm password. So these two values here have to match for the form to be submitted to the database. Okay, kind of way I would say way easier or more effective, as to when you have PHP validating this form, because if you use PHP for validation, the form has to be first submitted to the backend, and then the backend check if these parameters that you've set, are okay, and then it gives it a pass. Okay, so and then you can see that it's always returned. But this one, I think the user will prefer it if it sees if it gets feedback on what he's doing before he ever hits the submit button. Okay, so enough of talking. Let's go and see what we can do here. Okay, so I got this form here. This is the input tag for the email this is the input tag for the password. This is for the email. You can see here the ID, unique identifiers. This email, the ID for this here is pass. The ID for this confirm password field is con_pass. You can choose you can use whatever ID you want to use, just know that they have to be unique, and then when you're calling them, you have to call that same ID that you give to the particular field there. This will be displaying an error message here, so I give it an ID of error, so center the text. Okay, so this also is a select option where the person chooses his option, either male or female, and this is the button. Okay, so one thing I'll do, I think I can validate the form here. I can also have create a JavaScript file and then just link that to this HTML, but I think I'm just going to do everything in this HTML file here. So the first thing I'll do is to write my script tag right here, and then give these fields and variables, different variables. So I have let email is a variable. I'm using let instead of var. Kind of works better for me, and I think it's the newer one. I think people don't use var anymore. You encourage them to use var anymore if you're into JavaScript development. So using let get document, get element by ID. I want to get the element, the ID I give to the particular element, which is email, for the email field. And I got let, I'll have pass. This would be for the passport field. I think I'm giving an ID of pass. I'll have, let me just give this pass underscore con, and I'll get document, get element by ID. I think I give that one con underscore pass. And I have let's give this gender for the select tag. This will be gender. Let's give this error for the error display message. This should be, let's call this error as well. And finally, let's give this button for the submit button, element by ID. This should be submit. I'm putting semicolon, though it doesn't really matter in JavaScript in a way, but since I'm used to writing other programming languages that are very strict, so I'm just going to leave the semicolon there. It works good. It's good practice anyway. So you can see here, this is an ID of submit, this is an ID of gender, this is an ID of con underscore pass. Okay, we got it. This is an ID of pass here. We have it, and this is an ID of email. So you have to be sure that the ID you're passing in the input tag, corresponds to what you're getting by ID. And when you do get element by ID, they have to match. Okay. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to create a function that will disable this button right here when the page loads. So this button will be disabled when the page loads. So I'm going to write a function to do that. So I'll call this I'm just call this load. There's a fat arrow. This is an arrow function. Okay, so I'm using arrow function. Most people create like this. You have function, and then you have the load like this, and they do it this way. So, but I think I'm just going to stick with this ES6 method of creating it here. Okay, so this is a variable of button. So I'm going to say button. Now to disable the button in JavaScript, we'll just say the element dot disabled equals to true. Now what I'll do, I'll call this function right here on my body when the page loads. So I'll say unload. Unload is an event listener, and I'll call my function load here. We'll save this and let's go and check this. Control S to save. Don't forget to save your work. Let's go and check this out. Refresh. You can see your button is disabled. We cannot it's not submitting. Okay, so it's not submitting the form. So let's continue right here. So next thing we'll do here, we'll create a function that will validate these inputs here. So I'll just create a function using arrow. I'll use arrow functions as well. Let me just call these validate. You could call them whatever name you want to here. So this is the name of my function is validate. Okay, so I'll use an if else statement to check if the fields are empty or not. So I'll say if email dot value, this dot value gets whatever is being typed in that particular field. Yeah. Dot length checks how long it is. Is greater than 0. This is AND, logical AND operator. Pass dot value dot length is greater than 0. Okay, so I'm checking if this field, if the length, if it's not empty, this is what the statement means. Basically, if it's not empty, if you get the value and the length is greater than 0, that means it's not empty. So I'm going to check for the email, for the password, for the confirmed password, and for the gender as well. So let's proceed. This will be and I'll have pass underscore con, which is for the confirmed password. Dot value dot length is greater than 0. I'll also use my logical AND again. Then I'll get the gender. Now for the gender, I'm not going to use value.length because you can see clearly it's different from what we have here. We have input labels, but here we don't have input, we're using select. So the logic we use will be different here. So this will be gender.selected selected index. Okay, so if the selected index is not equal to 0, okay, so let's go to this select tag and let me just give a few explanations. Now you can see here I have this option here, selected, disabled, choose gender. So this means that this disabled means this cannot be selected at all. That's why if we can see here, you cannot choose this choose gender. Okay, so as an option here, so you can see it's not available because of this disabled. That I wrote here. Selected means that is the first thing that you get, by default when the page loads. You get this, being shown there. And so you can see from index, this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, and then if you have, as many option values that you have, so the one coming after this will be 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if you've done array, you know that index begins from 0. Okay, so this is 0. So I'm saying here, if the selected value, if it's not equal to 0, that's if it's not equal to choose gender, which is basically what I said then I will disable the button. So I will say button the disabled, or set it to false, like this. Okay, so set it to false. So for this to work, I need to call this method here within the input tags. Okay, so for this one here, for the email, I have on key up, which I called validate here, so you can see on key up. Now there are, I think it just gives a little explanation. There are events in JavaScript. Events are interactions that happen on a web page. Okay, so when the page loads for the first time, that's an event. When somebody clicks on the page, that's an event. When a key is pressed, there's an event. When a page is printed, that's an event. So they're more like interactions that happen when the user interacts with the web page. We have on key up event, we have key down, we have key press. Okay, key up event is fired when a key is released. When the key is released, you have key up event, that is fired when a key is released. We have key down event is fired when any key is pressed. For key down, when any key is pressed, the key down event can be called there. Key press event is fired when a key that produces a character value is pressed. Keys such as Alt key, Control key, Shift key, and all this. There's a ton of resources that you can get this Mozilla Developers Network. You can get that a ton of these documentations right there. Okay, so I'm using a key up here for this email. So on key up, I'll call this function. So when user starts typing, okay, this function is being called here. I'm going to call the function as well here on key up. I'll call validate. Like, so I'm just going to copy this and paste it here since I'm using the same function for them. Okay. All right, for this one here, I'm not going to use on key up. I'm going to use on change listener. It means that when the input there has changed, so I'll call validate here. Okay. So I think we can test this, and before we do any further logic, let's save these. Control S to save. And let's go to. Let's refresh this as well. Okay, so you can see this is disabled now. So let's put these. Let's put 1, 2, 3. Let's put 1, 2, 3 as well. Let's choose a gender. So you can see this is now not disabled anymore. So you can see now if this field is empty, we have not actually. We need to write a program that also check if this field is empty or not. So, but you can see this idea also works out. So to tackle this problem, we'll come here and say, okay, if the email value the length file will disabled. Okay, but if it is not, okay, we'll set disabled to false. But we can use an else statement here, and then we'll set button the disabled, we'll set it to true. So this means that if the value is greater than 0, if it's not empty, the button is disabled. But if it's empty, if it's not empty, the button is actually enabled. But if it's empty, the button is disabled. So I think this should solve that our problem. So let's come back here and refresh this. So let's do this again. Let's put 1, 2, 3. Here, let's put 1, 2, 3. Let's choose gender male. So let's try to delete this. So you can see now it's disabled. Okay, so at any point in time, you cannot have an empty field submitted. Okay, which kind of takes care of most of the problems that as a developer you might want to face with users on your web page. Okay, so you can see as long as this has a value, okay, it is the button will be enabled. But if it doesn't have a value, okay, not only this one, I think for all of them, okay, which you can see as well. Okay, so now I think we've handled that for this scope of validation. But let's look at this password and confirmed password. Let's see how we can validate these ones as well to make sure that what we're typing here rhymes with what we're typing here, and also they make sense before we submit it to the database. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to create another function. I will call that function maybe pass underscore match. Let me use an arrow function here. Okay. So what I'll check if I get this variable here, pass, this is for the password and the confirmed password. So I can say if pass dot value is not equal to pass underscore dot value. So what this means is that if what the user is entering here, I think let me go to the web page. If what the user is entering here does not equal to what the user is entering here, so the logic, the idea, or the statement is what I want to print out here. Okay, so what I'll do, I will say this is my variable that displays the error. I will call it error the inner HTML equals so pass words do not match. Okay, so besides that, I will also disable the button. So I will say button the disabled, I'll set this to true as well. Okay, so now if the passwords match, I'll write the logic in my else in a block. Yeah, then I'll say error dot inner HTML will be equals passwords match semicolon, and I'll put my button disabled, set this to false right here. Okay, so one more thing I need to do, I need to call this function. I was going to say method, it's not Java. I need to call this function here in the password fields, like you can see here on key up on here. So what you may say, I already have a function being called here. Yeah, I don't know. You can add as many functions as you want, provided you separate them with the semicolon. So I think the name of that function is pass underscore match. So here I'll put pass underscore match. Here I'll put pass underscore match as well. Here, so this should work fine. Let's see. Okay, so let's refresh this and just begin again. So we'll have this email. Let's put 1, 2, 3. Let's put 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you can see passwords match. Let's delete this. So you can see passwords do not match. So if I put something else, 2, 3, 4, blah blah blah, and the passwords do not match. So unless I put 1, 2, 3, so you can see now passwords match. Okay, we'll put this here mail. Okay, so we can actually submit the button. So let's do that again. Let's do this. Put 1, 2, 3. Put 1, 2, 3. Put this here so you can see. I think we got that problem. So we're having a little problem here, in the sense that let's redo this. This is getting validated even without this being checked. Let's do this 1 2 3. You can see the button is getting enabled without this one even being selected at all, and that's not what we want. So we're going to look at the code and see. We're just going to change some logic here. What we'll do something very simple. We will say here, and let's check if pass dot value has the same exact value as pass underscore con value here. Okay, so what we're checking if this field has the same value, as this here. So we want to run this code. We'll get rid of this one here, and we'll get rid of this one as well. So this should do the trick. Let's run this again and see what we get. This is password email. This is password 123 123 passwords match. So you can see the button is not getting enabled. Let's check for this last one here, and so the condition is fulfilled. So you can see if the passwords do not match, you can see there is a problem. You see passwords not match, and the button is disabled as well. Kind of what we wanted the first time. Okay, so guys, this is it. Validation with JavaScript for a simple HTML form. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next video.